Here is one of the earliest bread recipes in English. And the English were rich, they were rich before almost everybody else. So this also means, that this is, there may or may not be, there could be a German recipe from this period. There could be a French recipe, but this is a very, very early recipe. It's 1594. So prior to this, we have three recipes in a history book by William Harrison, and that's it. That's it. You can have the divine vision of that manuscript page by T.T. that I showed you at the beginning, but basically, this recipe will presumably have come from a manuscript cookbook, or this author, and in this case, has a manuscript that he got from a woman who was keeping recipes, or interviewed a baker. So I'd like to read this one. It's very early, 1594. It's not the first bread recipe in English, though, because Gervase Markham, the fabulous Markham, we're going to talk about next week, and maybe we'll read some poetry by him as well. But he worked out his bread recipes, writing recipes for racehorses. And he published his first racehorse recipe in 1593. So this is, I can say, the first English bread recipe written for humans in a cookbook. The making of manchets for my Lady Grey's use. So we're already name dropping, okay? The making of manchets, after, Madonna or something, or after Oprah. Pick some massively famous woman. That is what he's doing here. Or God, my daughter was talking to me about Kim Kardashian and what an amazing way that she had built a career on her body. Discussions you have with teenage girls. It was a feminist discussion about Kim Kardashian, actually. But that's what this is. So we're name dropping. Take 2 pecks of fine flour, which must be twice bolted, if you will have your manchet very fair. Then lay it in a place where you do use to lay your dough for your bread, and make a little hole in it, and put in that water as much leaven as a crab, or a pretty big apple, and as much white salt as will go into an eggshell, and all to break your leaven in the water. And put your flour, 1/2 pint of good ale yeast, and so stir this liquor among a little of your flour, so that ye must make it but thin at the first meeting. And then cover it with flour, and if it be in the winter, ye must keep it very warm, and in summer it shall not need so much heat. For in the winter it will not rise above warmth. Thus, let it lie 2 hours and a half. Then at the second opening, take more liquor as ye think will serve to wet all the flour. Then put in 1.5 pints of good yeast, and so all to break it in short pieces after ye have well labored it, till it come to a smooth paste. And be well aware at the second opening that you put not too much liquid sodden lye, for then it will run. And if ye take a little, it will be stiff. And if after the second working, it must lie a good 1/4 of an hour, and keep it warm, then take it up to the molding board, and with as much speed as possible to be made, mold up, and set it into the oven. Of 1 peck of flour, ye make 10 cast of manchets fair and good. Okay. And I'm sorry for the non-native speakers that this English is might be a little bit obscure at times. A peck is a 1/4 of a bushel. A peck is 2 gallons of flour. A gallon is 4 quarts. So I'm afraid that in losing my most recent version of this talk, I did lose the laying out of the ingredients. So the ingredients that matter, the facts that you need, that everyone needs to know, is that prior to 1826, this is what you need to know when you're actually redacting an English language bread recipe. If it's before 1826, then it is using the same measuring system that us Americans use today. Okay? In 1826, the British switched over to imperial measurements. So they made slight changes so that a quart isn't exactly a quart and a pint's not a pint, and so on and so forth. I don't know why. I haven't ever been able to figure that out. I assume it had to do with a trade war, maybe with United States. But be that as it may, this is not imperial measures. So all of these are modern American measures. So all of you who don't know them, all of you Europeans and the woman from Malaysia who's working sensibly in metric, you have to look them up. So a quart is 1 pound. A peck is 8 quarts. It's 8 pounds of flour. She's got 2 pecks. So this one is going to be 16 30. This is 16 pounds of flour. And she's saying it's twice bolted. So this is the very, very fine white flour. Hopefully I can find the slide, the Roman slide that shows you that in Latin, twice bolted flour had a name. It was the best flour. It's been around for a long time. So working this out, we know the flour is at 100%. She says in here, she mentions the amount of flour, of water. So this one is going to work out to 100% flour, 47.5% warm water, 3% sourdough, 12.5% barm, and 0.7% salt. I weighed out the salt in an eggshell. Now, if you're not using barm, so it makes it easier to compare it with a modern recipe, then we're going to move the barm, which is mostly water, into the water. You get 100% flour, 60% water, 3% sourdough, and the other parts don't really matter. So this recipe just comes out to being bread. I will note, and I will talk about the fact that she uses a little crab, a little bit of sourdough. This sourdough is mentioned in this recipe and later in 1614 recipe by Markham that we may or may not get to today. But those are the only cases of sourdough being included in English bread recipes where you have the sense that they might be talking about something that really happened. And this is dough that they held back. They either put it in salt or they just put it in with the flour. But they always also used yeast. The only pure sourdough recipe that suggests it's from an actual sourdough tradition is in that manuscript, a book of TT's. So she's taken some dough held back, she's adding some yeast, she's making a batter, she's putting some flour on top. This is a really standard English way. You had all your flour in the tub, you made a well, you made a little pre-ferment, you put flour on top. When that flour became all crackly, then it was time to go for the bulk fermentation. And in this case, you added more yeast from the brewer, more barm, and you went on. I do think there's a question why a wealthy person would have used some leftover dough, because leftover dough theoretically lets you use less barm. The barm you would have had to buy from the brewer, so it cost money. It was a money-saving thing. When we're not going to get into the Markham recipes that deeply today, but I think it's clear from the context of Markham's book that he's including some sourdough-ish ideas to help you be economical.